Hi, my name is Stan Jantz, and I'm here with Dr. Walt Russell, the author of the new book, Sustainable Church. Walt, it's good to be with you.
Good to be with you, Stan. Thank you.
Walt, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, Stan, positively, my wife Marty and I planted two churches on the East Coast, and we implemented what we thought the New Testament taught about what the church should be in terms of helping people discover their spiritual gifts. And it was the most delightful experience that we've ever had. We spent 7 years there in Baltimore, and it was life-changing for us, and we actually grew more spiritually during that time than any other time in our life. So a lot of what we experienced there and the concepts we implemented there are in the book, Sustainable Church. So it's really a part of my life message, truthfully. But on the negative side, I'm so sad and so grieved that in the vast majority of churches that they're very top-down and clergy, oriented, and that God's people don't know their gifts and they're not mobilized. And I've asked pastors and church leaders for over 35 years, what percentage of people in your churches you've been involved with, know their spiritual gifts? And the percentage that I've gotten for 35 years is 10 to 15%. So here's the most amazing organism in the history of the universe, the body of Christ, that's essentially a dysfunctional organism. And Stan, if your body or my body were only 10 or 15% functional, we wouldn't be here. We'd be on life support, wheeling around in a wheelchair and that. So it's tragic, and so I wrote this book to try to change that to where we would mobilize God's people to be and function how Jesus has gifted them to function in the body of Christ.
So the word sustainable is a word that people are more aware of, and we think of it in terms of food, of sustainable farms that tend to be more healthy, more organic. So what is a sustainable church?
Well, a sustainable church is one that, no matter what the changes economically and all of this, that it will survive long term. And I think the church is designed, this wonderful organism, the body of Christ, is designed to be the most amazing organism in the history of the universe and the most sustainable organism. But most churches are not organically structured, but they're organizationally structured. And so that's not going to make them sustainable over the next generation. I think there's going to be a lot of difficulty in them continuing to continue.
So there are lots of books written about the church and for the church and about how to grow a church. So how is this book different than all the other books that are available to pastors and church leaders?
Well, at times I feel like I'm a voice crying in the wilderness because I really advocate what the New Testament teaches, not what our culture teaches about what the church is. And the American cultural perspective, part of it is kind of an American success template that has been laid on the American church. But it's a very top-down, leader-oriented perspective of the church. And again, and most churches are spending 70 to 90% of their budget on their facility and on their staffing. And it's a very organizational sort of a structure rather than an organic structure. So I don't think that's going to be sustainable because of the data. And there's a lot of data coming out, Stan, about giving. The average evangelical in America gives between 2 and 3% of their gross income. 28% give less than 2%. And there is a 4-generation decline in percentage giving. Each successive generation gives less than their parents. So we're in big trouble, and these churches that spend 70 to 90% of their budget on facilities and staffing, that's just not going to be sustainable. They will likely lose their buildings and have to cut their staffing way down. And if that's what they think they need to exist, then that will not be sustainable over the next generation.
So what does it look like for the church to equip its members to live out the gospel in a sustainable church?
Well, good question, Stan. It actually comes from Paul's writings in Ephesians 4, where he talks about certain gifted members of the body of Christ are to equip the saints to do the work of ministry, so that all the saints functioning in the ministry build up the whole body of Christ. And again, the church we planted in Baltimore, one of the things that we did is we didn't call it people when they joined just becoming a member, but we chose an activist term. We called it joining the ministry team. And the first thing we did was then put them through a spiritual gift seminar where they discover their gifting. And we kept track of everyone's gifting, and we would send people to conferences if that aligned with their gifting. If there were books that we saw that helped people in their gifting, we'd buy those and give them to him. I copied a jillion articles that I knew would relate to different people and their gifts. And so it was so incredibly exciting because it was organic. It wasn't a top-down thing of those of us who happened to be paid. That was a peripheral issue, but it was a bottom-up thing. And everyone was ministering. And what happens then is in most churches, people sit passively and wait to be told what to do and when to do it, like children. And I think that's demeaning to God's people. And they never discover their gift. They never discover their role in the body of Christ. And that will be reflected for all eternity in terms of lost rewards for them. But all of our folks discovered their gift and knew it. And a part of our Sunday assemblies was we had a time of sharing where people shared about their ministries. Visitors would come and they would say, "Are all these people that are talking about their ministries on staff?" And I said, "No, none of them is. Zero. These are all simply spirit-gifted saints who have discovered and are using their gifts in the body of Christ." And so it was so incredibly exciting to see that and to experience that. And that's why all of us grew spiritually, because Jesus was working through all of these gifted members in the local body there. Additionally, that's why we multiplied and planted 3 other churches our first 4 or 5 years. So it's so exciting, and that's why I'm passionate about this book, is that somehow most of our churches have missed that, and we've substituted an organizational approach from the top down rather than this wonderful organic approach from the bottom up.
Dr. Walt Russell is the author. The book, Sustainable Church.